Surviving Mars is a real-time, city-building game with an apt name. Your job is to survive on Mars. The tutorial is long, but once you've completed it, then you know very well what to do. In-game hints also pop up to guide you further. I'm used to both strategy and survival games. City building is less of my thing, but I'm a fan of sci-fi, and the idea of a possible future colonization of Mars intrigues me. So, due to the spin on its city-building aspect, I decided to give this game a try. Essentially, the game is all about using micromanagement to survive. There's a ton going on at once. First, you need to gather resources, such as metals and concrete, to construct things. How to gather what depends on the resource. Some resources, such as concrete, can be extracted easily with an automated building. Other types of resources can't be automatically extracted and require colonists to work to either get them or make them. There are also some scattered surface deposits which can be harvested by drones and RC transport vehicles, but surface deposits are unreliable because they're small, random, and take a while to collect. So surface deposits are more like the icing on the planetary cake. Importing resources is also possible, but you only have so many rockets to do this with. It takes time, and rockets also have other useful purposes. So you have to carefully plan out when you want cargo deliveries, what to make, and when to focus on what resource. Colonists can arrive after you've constructed both a dome and a life support system that delivers power, water, and oxygen to keep them alive in their dome home. Delivering their life support will require pipes, power cables, water generators, oxygen generators, water tanks, and oxygen tanks. You'll also need to make food via hydroponic farms and whatnot. The domes also need to provide services and housing in order for your colonists to stay sane and not commit suicide. But not all colonists will end their lives if things get bad. Some won't do it no matter what. One positive trait prevents that. The traits of colonists are varied at random. You can pick applicants with various traits, both good and bad traits, by choosing which people you like from a list of would-be colonists. You can even filter the applicants by their traits, though what specialties they have do matter as well. You can do things in-game to increase how many people you have to select from, which increases the likelihood of finding potential colonists with both the skills and traits that you want. So, for example, what's that positive trait that makes sure a colonist is hardy enough to never commit suicide? Religion. Religious colonists never commit suicide. Those without religion break down easier than people with faith do because people without religion just aren't as capable of keeping stable. Yeah. The trait system is on and weirdly biased. Another example comes with the vegan trait. All vegan says is, "Don't worry, they'll tell you." So, to make an overdone joke about vegans preaching, this strategy game doesn't tell you what the trait actually does so that you can use it strategically. What the vegan trait does is it gives the person a comfort bonus if they live near a farm, a penalty bonus if they live near a ranch, and they won't work on a ranch. I found that out after looking online. And most of the food options in-game are plant-based, so this trait could be used well for optimizing colonists' comfort levels. This means that keeping the trait's functions a secret, just to make a tired joke, was pretty lame since micromanagement is a big part of the game. Anyway, when you're ready for these colonists, then they'll arrive in the same rockets that can be used for cargo deliveries. But the rocket's usefulness goes beyond delivering resources and passengers. They also deliver useful units such as drones and prefabricated buildings. You also have to reuse the same rockets to go back and forth between Mars and Earth, which means that their departures can also benefit your Martians. When you send the rockets back, then you can also send off exports for cash and let any visiting tourists return home for additional prestige. But if you want to explore anomalies, then that will also require using the rockets. So there's a lot that these rockets can do for you, and their uses also have to be considered and juggled. Meanwhile, research is done to improve life on Mars, and that leads to tech and other things that will greatly aid your goal of survival. You can also boost research speed and try to optimize that as well. I was able to figure out what was needed and keep my people alive, but after about 7 hours, which included the tutorial, I felt bored enough to stop. The more I played, the more it felt like busy work instead of fun. I just didn't enjoy surviving on Mars. Building things up takes a bit, but it's not too difficult if you pay attention and juggle tasks well. To be clear, it is possible to ramp up the difficulty. That's not the issue, the gameplay is. For example, you can make your game harder by starting in an area with less resources and more meteors, which would require much more time and effort. A meteor could easily wipe a settlement if everything's clustered, and life support or power takes a direct hit. You'd have to plan for greater greater redundancy. By the way, my settlement looks like this because I chose a zone that ranked meteors as being very rare. This is why I didn't really care about optimizing the layout for meteors right away. I still built some backups to be safe though. However, I chose where I did because it seemed dumb to me to build in an area where random death rocks often fall from the sky. I wanted to pick a safe landing site, as real Martian colonists would. My goal was an experience of trying to settle on Mars, not trying to settle in the harshest environment there possible. But settling onto the planet and surviving Mars just felt like busy work to me. The feeling was made worse by several flaws in the gameplay, which made juggling the various tasks unnecessarily tedious. For instance, certain buildings churn up dust, which will damage anything too close. The dust range is shown when you place these buildings, but it's not shown on the map when you go to place new buildings. You have to click on the dust churner, try to remember the range, and eyeball it as you place surrounding buildings. That's ridiculous from both a real-world perspective and a gaming one. In the real world, given the difficulties involved in extraterrestrial transport and building, scientists and engineers would carefully have planned everything out to prevent potential damage to surrounding structures. In-game, this should have been reflected by displayed boundaries when handling the blueprints for new structures. Games often show the ranges of things too, so the lack here was noticeable even from a gaming perspective. Another example, domes linked via tunnels share resources, as if they're one system, but viewing their sum total needs isn't a quick click. Plus, even building these tunnels has its own hassles. The tunnels only can stretch so far, and they have to start and end in existent domes. You can't pre-build the tunnel or lay out a blueprint for it and then build the next dome that you want to connect to. This means that you can't easily determine the max tunnel length. It's easy to accidentally build domes either a little bit too far from each other to connect them, or to construct two domes a little bit closer together than you might have wanted to. It's a weak construction mechanic because it's making the player guesstimate way too much. In a micromanagement game, that's bad enough, but the added theme of building on another planet makes it really awkward because space colonization is about careful planning, not just taking your best guesses without measurements. There's also no hex grid, unless you install a mod, as far as I'm aware. This makes planning and setting up a layout slower, too. The game is filled with problems such as these, and I thought that they really detracted from the gameplay. Unnecessary steps harm fluidity, sure. However, for me, the big issue was that the problems contradicted the very idea behind the game. Colonizing Mars is a difficult task, filled with vast amounts of pre-planning. The idea of going there and guesstimating where dust goes, how long tunnels stretch, and so on felt ridiculous in context, because there would be teams of scientists, engineers, and millions upon millions of dollars riding on such decisions. Just eyeball it. Shouldn't have been a main method, let alone often the only one. The lack of info given to the player was often surprising. As for the look and the sound, sometimes the music almost drowned out their own narrator.
The colonist just snapped.
Audibly, it seemed okay otherwise, but it was nothing that I especially enjoyed. The graphics are standard enough, but kinda bland. I zoomed in at points to see if there was any extra effort put into them, to see if there were any little details put in. After all, some games do that, such as Evil Genius. However, there wasn't anything that I saw. For instance, here, I wanted to see if the flaps would move when the drone ran inside, and they just hung there. Again, that's fine enough, but it's also static and uninteresting. There was little detail or charm in the design of the game in general. Random quotes were included in some descriptions, but these quotes felt like random fan service for sci-fi and science fans, rather than a game's unique flavor. There just wasn't a cohesive theme, which bolstered the idea of setting human footprints onto the surface of the red planet for the first time. Yet, sometimes there were random, lame jokes, such as making fun of vegans. I think that this lack of vibrancy and focus really lowered the potential of the setting, which was disappointing. And on another note, another thing that I really disliked was in the game, but wasn't actually the game itself. This was the privacy agreement. I couldn't get this game to work when I used my firewall to block callouts. When I tried to, then the game would crash. As a result, I had to allow the game to make callouts, and decided to read the privacy policy for Paradox Interactive. I skimmed over it and yeah, it bothered me a bit. Their privacy policy says that if you use one of their games, then they will collect data on you. Where you are, what you use to play, what language you speak, your gender, how long you play, how often you play, if you play multiplayer and with who, what games are in your game library on Steam or wherever you're playing from, and additional stuff which I didn't understand. They also claim to have partnerships with Adjust, Google Ads, Buff Panel, Display and Video 360, Facebook, Google Analytics, Instagram, Tapjoy, Twitch, Twitter, Hotjar, YouTube, Reddit, and Moloko in order to get even more information on their customers. They say that it's for doing tasks such as delivering relevant advertising and figuring out if their own advertising works, but the level of this stuff made me feel uncomfortable. I'm used to devs anonymizing user data for stuff, like for tracking down bugs and so on. I'm not used to the level of personalized tracking that's entangled with playing Surviving Mars, and for advertising purposes, especially since it's not a free game. With free games, I expect more tracking and advertising. For games that are paid, I expect more privacy. And that I couldn't just opt out by blocking the game with my firewall made me feel even more uncomfortable about the whole thing. It just felt invasive. I mean, I wanted to play a game about surviving on Mars. I didn't want this crud bundled in. Plus, it's one of those things where opting in is the default and opting out is a hassle. That bothered me a lot too, because in past games I've played, they easily let you opt out of anonymized analytics with a click. You just untick a box. Surviving Mars lacking an easy opt-out and having personalized tracking bothered me. All they did was advise me to read their privacy policy, which I'm guessing that they legally had to do, and then the hoops went around opting out. So, all in all, I didn't enjoy the game because its flaws made its core micromanagement mechanics feel guessy, and that also harmed the theme of making a carefully planned settlement on Mars. I wasn't drawn into its setting either. Instead of vibrant, unique, cohesive, or inspiring, the design felt unfocused and kinda flat, and with the crappy, mandatory opt-in to be data harvested, I felt even more distaste for it.